Watch. Okay, good morning, officially. We're going to start with a text from this book, Jesus in the Home. Need your glasses? Want to borrow mine? Do you know this book? No? In Portuguese, it's called Jesus no Lar. And it's an amazing book. Sometimes I use it in my gospel at home. And it's basically the spirit, Neo Lucius. It's psychographed by Chico Xavier, and it's basically stories of situations that happened during the time of Jesus when he was with the apostles, which is where the gospel at home actually came to be. So the evenings that they were all together and some of the apostles had a question, a doubt, or they felt in a certain way, and then Jesus always used a story or a parable to help them understand what his message, what he wanted to say about their doubts or misguided comments or something like that, or misguided feelings. This one is called The Idle Son. Idle is, idle, like who does nothing, not proactive, not active. The small group was discussing the various problems of faith in God when Jesus began narrating complacently. A great sovereign king owned vast domains. There were countless lands, rivers, plantations, orchards, and herds in his prodigious kingdom. Innumerable subjects served his house in all areas. Some of them never left their lord's sight for very long. From time to time, they would visit his palace, offering him their service or the flowers of their affection, as they received their new schedules for constructive work. Others, however, lived as they saw fit in the immense woodlands. They prized their complete freedom with an obvious lack of discipline. They were real troublemakers in the vast empire because instead of helping nature, they spoiled it without mercy. They killed animals for the mere pleasure of hunting. They poisoned the waters to kill mass quantities of fish. They chased after birds or burned the crops of the faithful servants, even though deep down they knew they should obey the Almighty Lord. One of these thoughtless and idle subjects, however, did not completely disregard his belief in the existence and goodness of the king. After lengthy adventures in the forest to kill defenseless birds when his belly was already filled to the brim, he would comment on his faith on the rich owner of the vast and valuable realm. A sovereign as generous as the one who made the waters, lands, trees, and flocks must be very wise and just, he would explain conscientiously. But he tactfully avoided every rule. He intended to live his own way without any rules, not even those of the one that had given him the valley in which he was living his luxurious and happy existence. After a number of years had gone by, when his hands were unable to lift the smallest weapon to harm nature, when his foggy eyes were unable to make out the landscape with the same clarity as when he was young, when his tired and sad body was bent over toward the ground, he decided to seek out the Lord in order to ask for his protection and support. He crossed beautiful fields where the loyal, hard-working, and happy servants were cultivating the soil of the immense estate. Finally, he arrived at the illuminated home of the king. He was greatly surprised to find that the guards wouldn't let him in because they couldn't find his name in the book of active servants. He implored, begged, and whined. However, one of the guards said, "The king's spare time is set aside for his workers." "What do you mean?" cried the lazy subject. "I have always believed in the sovereignty and kindness of our glorious ruler." Thank you, Rick. But the guard replied without blinking an eye, "What good was such a conviction if you avoided the rules of our sovereign, wasting valuable time upsetting his works? Your past is alive in your current situation. What good did it do to trust in the Lord if you never came to him, offering 1 minute of collaboration on behalf of everyone else? So you should see that your belief was merely a way of appeasing your conscience for the follies of your heart." And the subject, now compromised by his unworthy deeds and in the poorest of physical health, was forced to begin his task from scratch for his own spiritual renewal. The master fell quiet for a few minutes and then concluded, "This is a picture of every idle child of God. Will any healthy and intelligent persons who believe in the existence of the Eternal Father, who recognize his power, justice, and goodness through the physical expressions of nature, but who do not come to him in simple prayer from time to time, or honor his laws with the smallest gesture of aid for their fellow beings, or who do not show the smallest trace of interest in the designs of the great sovereign, be able to reap any reward from their dead, pointless convictions?" With this question, which silenced his listeners, the evening's gospel worship came to a close. Let's do our initial prayer. Dear Lord, dear Father, we have our hearts full of gratitude for the opportunity of being here today, either in person or following online. We thank you for the opportunity to learn, to understand, to feel, and to experience all the divine laws that you brought through to us through the example of your virtues. Dear Lord, we ask that the mentors of our house help us listen, understand. Let the message that Jesus brought touch our hearts so that we can live by your divine laws through the virtues connected to them. So be it. All right.
Dá um point se você conectar aqui. Tem que conectar.
Ok. Tá.
Espera um pouquinho, senão vai usando o teclado.
Tá. No, okay. I'm good with the keyboard. Okay, so last time, or not. There, yeah. Okay, so last time we talked about disciplined faith. And today we're going to talk about the power of faith, because everybody says faith is powerful, right? Faith is power. A fé de Jesus, or a fé em Jesus tem poder, something like this they say in Portuguese, right? Yeah, we say all that. We repeat all that like parrots. But what's the influence of faith in our lives? What does faith, oh, thanks. What does faith change in our lives? What's the difference if I have or if I don't have faith? What difference is it going to make? Why should I have faith? How is it going to help me? Or is it going to help me? So maybe if we, oh, there. So maybe in order to understand what this influence is, it's easier if we try to start backwards. So maybe we need to try to understand some of the effects of lack of faith, right? Sometimes we just need a comparison. We need something to start from. So I don't know. What would some of the effects of lack of faith be? In your opinion, what do you think? What do you think lack of faith causes us in terms of feelings? We talked about some last time.
Sadness.
Definitely. Sadness. Anger. Or rebellion. Yeah. What else? Remember we talked about faith being a conscientious choice to believe and trust. So it's a conscientious choice to believe and trust God because I know He's there. If I don't have faith, if I don't know God's there, what else can that cause me? Or if I'm not sure if God's there.
Loneliness.
Depression.
Yes, depression, loneliness.
Helplessness. I'm sure.
Yeah, helplessness. Yes, yes.
Just to feel that I don't have help from anyone else or anything.
Yeah, because if I don't believe anybody is there to help me, I will feel helpless. And we also feel, and like with the helplessness, it's not like a situational or a circumstantial helplessness or insecurity. It's an existential one. It's not, I'm not sure what to do in this specific situation. I don't know what to do about a coworker's behavior. It's existential insecurity. Who am I? What am I doing here? What's life about? This is existential insecurity because of lack of faith. Existential doubt. Why do I exist? Why doesn't God just make me happy and we're done and we can be done with this? Right? Existential emptiness, which sometimes we try to fill with it's a word that most people misinterpret in English and in Portuguese, which is the sensual feelings, not just talking about sex, but everything like taste. Like I try to fill my emptiness with food. I try to fill my emptiness with shoes, with alcohol, with, yeah, with whatever, with traveling, with being an adrenaline junkie, doing reckless things because I feel empty and I need to feel the emptiness. I need to fill the void with something, right? And ultimately, fear. Because we don't know. We don't know who we are. We don't know why we're here. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if it's written in the stars and no matter what I do, my fate is set and there's nothing I can do to change it.
If I will burn forever in hell.
Yes, yeah. If I'm gonna burn in hell forever, or how long I'm gonna be in purgatory. And you know, even for spiritists, it's not uncommon for spiritists actually to lack faith, to have circumstantial faith. I believe and trust in God while everything is going well in my life. If something goes wrong, why did God do that to me? And then doesn't matter that I am a spiritist, I am just going to have the same attitude that a materialist does, right? All right. So, what are some possible results of these feelings? So, helplessness, emptiness, fear. You already said one of them.
Loneliness.
Yes. But what can they become?
Can become depression, they can become diseases, they can become, in the worst case, suicide.
Yes, exactly. So some fear syndromes like anxiety, panic attacks, agoraphobia. Agoraphobia is fear of open places. You don't want to go to a place with too many people. It's those people who are locked in their houses or apartments and they don't want to go out. Some of them get to the point of locking themselves in the smallest place they can find. They hide under the table. They lock themselves in closets because they don't want to have any contact with the outside world. Now, fear can be objective or imaginary. I don't know if any of you were here when Luis gave his talk about fear. Were you here? Oh, you should watch it online. It's yeah, Luis Savioli, yeah. So he had a small a mini talk about fear, and he talked about this as well. That fear can be either objective or imaginary. Objective fear is fear of becoming sick, of aging, of becoming vulnerable somehow, like losing your job, your house. They are fear of things that can happen, that come into being, or fear of a certain situation that triggers our instinct for survival. These are objective fears. They have a reason for being. And then we have imaginary fears. They are fears with no psychological base at all, except that we don't know anything about the divine laws and we lack self-knowledge and we fear the unknown. Right? So some fear of losing your job is objective. Fear of an ET invasion. Based on what? It's fear of the unknown. So it's an imaginary fear. It's something we produce in our minds. And it's just as harmful. And then, where do they come from? Where do these fears come from? These feelings?
Coming from our mind.
Yes. But what causes them?
Lack of trust. Nothing to
Be attached to.
or protect you.
Okay, yep, you're in the right line of thought. In order to illustrate it, I have a koan for you, and a koan is a narrative. I have to read the definition because I learned about it recently. It's a narrative, a dialogue, a question, or a statement that contains aspects that defy reason, that sometimes don't make sense, are a little fantasy. And according to Eastern tradition, tradição oriental, koans aim at providing illumination. So they're kind of parable. They're not fables because they don't involve animals, but they are stories that the idea is to help you understand something and illuminate yourself. And this one was taken from chapter 4 of Energia dos Chakras e o Poder Terapêutico da Fé, Meditação e Oração. Okay? So, let's see. Once, there was a small leaf that was feeling out of place. It believed that its place was neither on the twig, nor on the branch, or even on the trunk where it was, and it decided to leave, detaching itself from the big tree. It fell on the ground, and the wind that takes everything took it far away from its origin. It faced the gravel and ended up falling in the waters of a creek. In this stream, it was taken aimlessly, not knowing for sure where it was going, tripping on rocks, trunks, and following its destiny, completely disoriented. Then came the rain. The burning sun came as well, and the inclement weather made the little leaf very tired and withered. It would ask to get out of the stream. It was asking and begging when a farmer who was passing by the river felt compassion for the little leaf. Seeing it at the mercy of the stream, he took it and put it with the other leaves around the trunk of a beautiful tree to fertilize it. At this moment, it felt connected to the original plan again, from which it had withdrawn itself. Only some time later, the nutrients of this little leaf traveled to a new trunk in a new branch and became a leaf again. But instead of trying to get away again, it preferred to stay and accompany the fruit that would arrive in the spring. Can we see something here that sounds familiar? So what was the problem with the leaf in the beginning? Let's do a little reading comprehension. Grade 2 reading comprehension. What was the problem with the leaf?
It felt a part of the group.
Yeah.
Belong there.
Yeah,
she belong in there.
Exactly. Well, yeah, we say she because in Portuguese it's feminine. So the leaf didn't feel it belonged in the tree. And it just decided to leave. Can we decide we don't feel a part of something? Can we decide we don't belong? Oh, yeah. God gave us free will, right? And what happened then?
And then she suffered.
Bless you. It used its free will and then?
She suffered.
Oh, yeah.
And she suffered, right? Because she
Yep.
moved from one place to the other. She was going in the river.
Literally going with the flow, right?
Yeah.
And it even uses the perfect word here that it uses, in my opinion, is, well, two words. Maybe if we turn it on, it works.
Maybe it will help.
Yeah? Ha! Surprise, surprise! It works when you turn it on. So aimlessly, because on the tree, it was in a place and it had an objective, and that was it. Then the moment it decided to leave, it fell in the creek, and then the stream started taking it aimlessly because the leaf wasn't controlling anymore. It wasn't in control anymore. And then it says that following its destiny, completely disoriented. Because I don't belong here, but I'm not thinking about where do I belong? Is it something that we do? I don't want this. You know, like when we're young, I don't know if everybody has done that. I have. I don't like my job. I'll quit. I quit without having another one. And then my parents have to pay my bills for a couple months till I get another job. So I don't want this. I'm quitting. But have I thought about what do I want then? What's the alternative? Right? Where that? There it is. Okay, so yeah, it suffered, it was aimless, it was disoriented, and then someone felt sorry for the leaf and helped it, right? And he helped the leaf go back where?
To the tree, right? No,
Yeah.
so it was reborn, right? No,
Yes, it was a different tree,
yeah.
but the objective was the same, right? So maybe a different existence, right? At what point do you think the leaf realized it had made a mistake?
When she decided not to go away again. A little bit funny.
When it was going with the flow.
The Koan mentions the exact moment. And it's very important. And it's very important. It's not about something that happened, it's about how it felt.
Oriented.
A little after that. So it was going aimlessly. Then came the rain. The burning sun came as well. And the inclement weather made the little leaf very tired and withered. At this point, what happened? It started to ask and beg. So when we're talking about this connection, when we get to the point of depression, of phobias, when we get to a point where we're tired of suffering like the little leaf, what do? We ask to get out.
If you still have one, yeah, a little bit more, right? Because you reach a threshold.
Yeah, and in this case, we can even be talking about like many existences, many lives, because eventually we will all get tired of suffering. Some people suffer longer, some people realize it sooner. At some point, we will all do it. So the moment we get tired of suffering, we can wait. Yeah. The moment we get tired of suffering, we can ask for help. And that's what the leaf did. And then the farmer took pity on the leaf and helped it, right? So if we analyze it, and this is Alirio speaking from Energia dos Chakras, the koan refers to a movement that is common with many of us, wanting to detach ourselves from the divine love when we give way to pride and rebellion. I don't belong here. I'm better than this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to develop virtues. I want to have fun. I don't want to work. I want to have fun. I want to party. However, when we are disconnected, we start to feel abandoned. We weather several storms of fear and insecurity until we connect to the Father through prayer, humbling our pride, entertaining. That's not entertaining. Our rebellion, reconnecting ourselves with God. I promise I revised the text. Oh, this is not mine. Duh. Okay, it won't have a highlighter. So humbling our pride. Oh, taming, acalmando, amansando. Taming our rebellion, amansando a nossa revolta. Reconnecting ourselves with God. So when the leaf was asking and begging, what was she doing? Here, that is here on the text.
Reconnecting.
Through?
To fear and insecurity. Oh.
How do we ask for God? How do we ask for God's help? So no matter how much we deny God, no matter how much we disconnect ourselves from God, no matter how many incarnation it takes us to understand that God is there for us, that we leave, we go, we try to disconnect ourselves from Him, but He's never disconnected from us. The moment we ask, we get help. A farmer comes for us. Right?
However, you, in order to get the reward, right? In order to get God's help and the path of the ways through prayer, you need to trust, you need to believe. We need to build or the resilience or the faith, right? To
Yes.
through prayer access God's.
A good example, very good example we have is, for example, in the book Nosso Lar. So André Luiz was in the umbral for 8 years. A few times he kind of started praying and then he stopped, then he gave up. Until one day when he was way too tired of suffering, he prayed with faith. He believed, he trusted. He asked from the bottom of his heart. At that moment, he got help. And then he was taken to Nosso Lar. Does that mean that he immediately became the most faithful person and was immediately practicing the virtues? So see how loving God is? We have our limitations, and God knows of our limitations. So we need to believe, we need to trust, but only a moment of that will be, if it's sincere, it will be enough for us to get help. From that moment on, always up to us. It's always about how we use our free will. So in the beginning, how did he use his free will? After André Luiz was taken to Nosso Lar.
He repeated the same behaviors.
Yeah, he complained, right? He wanted to start working as a doctor. It took him a while to understand how things worked and what he had to do before and what real work in the spiritual colony was and all that kind of stuff. But again, every time we ask for a chance, we have it. So it's up to us to use it properly.
But to start a fire, right? But to make the big fire, we need the air, as mentioned, something that will grow. But first, you need to have the first spark.
Spark.
Spark, right? So that moment is when you realize that what you're doing was wrong, you are faithless, and then
and we see that in so many things. Nosso Lar is one example. Another example is the parable of the sower, a parábola do semeador. There are the seeds that fall on the side of the road, in the thorn bush. You remember the other? Yes, and in the rocks. So the one that falls, for example, in the thorn bush, it starts to grow, and then the thorns crush it. Sometimes it's that first spark. It's that moment that André Luiz had. And then he falls back into his old habits. So we also probably have had a lot of those moments throughout our existences. The whole idea of the invitations from Jesus. Think about Publius Lentulus in the book 2,000 years ago. He was in front of Jesus. Jesus himself invited him. And he said no. Can you imagine a bigger spark than that? That was the whole fire itself. That was the sun itself. Yeah, that was the sun itself. And he still said no, because we always have our free will. And it's one of those things I in my mind, I always imagine it as a crank, uma manivela. Sometimes we start moving it and we let it go. But in order to make the whole engine work, you need to keep going. You need to keep going. And then you will see the result of everything working, not just a few turns. And we do that. So, parable of the sower, the seeds in the thorn bush. We start and give up, right? And sometimes we have to do that several times until we understand that at a certain point we will have to keep going, or we're not going to get any results ever, right? But now let's reflect. Are we abandoned? No. But let's imagine we're not Spiritists and we're not Christians. So we, humanity in general, we don't always know that we're not abandoned, because there's the ignorance of not knowing, right? Not knowing that God's always there for us. There's the doubt when we don't trust and believe, when we don't choose to trust and believe, because some people think you're either born like this or you're not. You either have it or you don't. They don't understand that it's something we actually develop, and it's a lot of work to develop. So we're not abandoned. So what we need is the knowledge of the laws, and that God is there for us. Even when we try to avoid him, he will always be there, always with open arms, and will always give us help every time we ask for it, no matter how many times, until we decide to stay with the tree, right? And this disconnection leads us to fear. But when we bring the connection back, what are we going to fear when we know that God will always be there to catch us if or when we fall? There's nothing to fear, right?
And this is the feeling. Because I just read this last week, right? This is small sections of Stephen and how do we say this? Paul English?
Paul and Stephen.
Paul and Stephen. And this is the feeling that the first Christians had. That Saul
Yeah, Saul, yeah.
didn't have. And he envied that. Hey, how do they manage to get to that state that they are very
And because he didn't have it, he tried to destroy it.
Yes. Right, so it's exactly the same feeling that Stephen had, that Abigail had, right? The first Christian Aeneas had,
Yeah.
the first Christian had.
Yeah, some of them went happily and singing to their death. And we're going to see something about that here. So, in the Gospel according to Spiritism, chapter 5, item 19, St. Augustine, in the comments from the spirits, and this one is called Evil and Its Remedy. It's a longer one, so I have just a small part here. So St. Augustine says, what remedy can be prescribed for those attacked by cruel obsessions and mortifying evils? Bear in mind, this is more than 160 years ago, so people were not talking about depressions and phobias and right? So people were not talking about panic attacks or anything like that. So he says, cruel obsessions and mortifying evils. Obsessão, yeah, obsessão. Yeah. There is but one infallible way, through faith, which is the appeal to heaven. What is the appeal to heaven? Prayer is when the little leaf asked to leave the stream, when it begged to get out of there, because it finally realized it had made a mistake. Which is the appeal to heaven? If at the moment of highest poignancy in your suffering, you intone hymns to the Lord? Does it mean that we have to sing? No.
Have to
It's a poetic way to say pray, right? With our hearts. Then the angel at your bedside. Who is the angel at our bedside? Yes, our guardian angel, guardian spirit, mentor, whatever name. Will show you the sign of salvation and the place which you will one day occupy. Isn't that what the superior spirits do? They show us where we're gonna get when we evolve, right? I'm gonna be an Emmanuel. I'm gonna be a Chico one day, then I'm gonna grow and evolve to be an Emmanuel, and I'm gonna grow and evolve to be Saint Augustine, and I'm gonna grow and evolve to be. So the messages they bring us when we have faith, they show us our path. Exactly what he says. They show the place we will one day occupy.
Here are the three. It's knock and the door will open, ask and you will
It
get
will be given, yeah.
And what's the third?
Oh, you got me. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, we have to look it up. Faith is the only sure remedy for suffering. It will always show the infinite horizon before which the few cloudy days of the present will vanish. We always think that whatever suffering, whatever problem we have right now will never pass, will never go away. We think this life is too long. We can't take it anymore. We don't want it anymore. Compared to eternity, it's a few cloudy days of the present. If we think 300-400 years ago, we had much bigger problems, right?
Matthew 7:7. Ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find.
Oh, seek and you will find.
Knock and the door will be open to you. So it's simply ask first.
Yeah.
This is what we're saying here, right? Through faith, you ask.
Yeah.
And then seek, of course, and you will find.
Mm-hmm.
And then knock and the door will be open. Matthew 7:7.
Exactly. And you know, we connect with so many other passages. So you can connect that passage with the passage where Jesus talks about the narrow door. Because it's not the door that is there for everybody to see. It's the narrow door. So you have to seek and you have to knock. And the knocking is the efforts we make to develop the virtues. Therefore, do not ask, what is the remedy for ulcer or sore, temptation or trial? Remind yourselves that those who believe are strengthened through the remedy of faith. And those who doubt of its sufficiency, be it even for an instant, will be immediately punished because they will quickly feel the pungent anguishes of affliction. Is he talking about punishment in the sense that if I doubt God, God's going to crush me? God's going to punish me? I'm going to get a timeout? Is this the punishment he's talking about? How do we get punished because we doubt? Why would we get punished because we doubt? Does it sound fair to you? Just because I had a little doubt, I'm going to be punished? Let's go back to the little leaf. Why did the little leaf suffer?
So when you have doubt, you are kind of disconnecting.
Did God punish the leaf? But she suffered, didn't it? Did she or it? It suffered, didn't it? So do you understand how we misinterpret words? We understand the words, we misunderstand the message. Yes, we will be punished and we will suffer. But this is only the consequence of our own choices. It's the result of not using our free will well. The only reason why the little leaf suffered, it's because of the choice it made. So we can't say it was punishment, right? Because it really suffered. But it wasn't God who said, because you doubted, you're gonna suffer. Law of cause and effect. Law of free will and responsibility. The leaf was free to choose to detach itself from the tree, and it did. But then comes the law of responsibility. It was responsible for its own action. And then the wind came and took it to the water. And from there on, it was just disorientation. And it was just going like crazy. And it couldn't stop until it had enough of suffering and asked for help. So we are not punished because we doubted. It's just a consequence of the doubt. It's the law of cause and effect. The cause is the doubt. The effect is the suffering. Because of the doubt, it took an action that was bad for itself. So it's very easy for us to blame God, to say, God is punishing me. Oh, what have I done? God is punishing me. Is he? Or am I just suffering the consequences of my own actions, of the way I used my free will?
And also because humanity has been told this for at least 2,000, right? Or at least 1,000.
Understand the words, misunderstand the message.
Yeah. Right, so I think it's already in the
And it's a paradigm in our minds. We need to break free of it. And every now and then we go back to it. And then we have to remind ourselves, he says here, remind yourselves. And that's what we have to do. We have to remind ourselves. Go back to trusting, believing, go back to reflecting on the consequences of your possible consequences of our actions, reflecting on, am I using my free will properly? Am I doing unto others something I would not like done to me? Am I treating others the way I would like to be treated? Because many times we think that whatever we're doing, it's just our problem, and that's it. But pretty much anything we'll do will somehow affect someone.
Even if it's us.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. And then again, we have the law of society. So something that I think might only affect me, might only be my problem, isn't necessarily. Because if I do something that makes me sick, my family is involved too. My mom's going to be worried back in Brazil. I won't be able to take care of my kids. Then it's going to be a burden for the father. And the kids are going to feel, why isn't my mom taking care of me or my dad? And so on. Sometimes we think it's only for us, but it's not. Right? Even bad mood, it affects everybody around you. So it's all about using our free will properly as well. Then, in the Spirit's book, question 922, Kardec says, earthly happiness is relative to the position of each person. And here he's talking about moral evolution. The more evolved, the happier you are. And that suffices for the, what suffices for the happiness of one? Would be misfortune for another, right? We say one man's treasure is another man's poison. So what's good for one, what makes one happy, doesn't make the other one happy. And then Kardec asks, is there, nevertheless, a common standard for happiness for all? Is there a rule of thumb? Is there something that we can say, this is for absolutely everyone? This works for everyone. Do you think there is?
We just read, right, and believe. solution that they would have.
Yeah, and it's a good hint that we're talking about this. So, for material existence, it is the possession of all that is necessary. Sometimes the problem is that we don't learn to live with what's necessary. We keep wanting more than what we need, and that makes us unhappy. So we're not unhappy because we don't have enough. We're unhappy because we want more than what we need. So in general, materially speaking, it's to have everything that we need. For the moral life, it is a good conscience and faith in the future, which means faith in God. Does that sound reasonable?
And it's interesting when we reflect about the good function. Right? We remember the divine laws are in our own.
Mm-hmm.
It means that good conscience is that we are following or we are adequate to the divine. We are not violating them.
Yes.
That is a difference, right?
Yep. And and again, this results in happiness. Happiness is the result of a combination of virtues that we are exercising, that we are practicing, that we're living through, right? Or living by. And then in the Gospel according to Spiritism, chapter 11, item 13, a protecting spirit, and this is called faith and charity. Again, this is just the end. It's a much longer one, and there's a lot of interesting stuff there too. But then the Spirit says, you would be right to affirm that humanity was intended to be happy in this world, as long as it was sought not in material pleasures, but in goodness. Sought é ser buscada, contanto que a felicidade fosse buscada, não em prazeres materiais, mas em bondade. The history of Christianity tells of martyrs going happily to their execution. Today, in your society, 160 years ago, there is no longer a need for Christians to face the Holocaust and martyrdom, nor the sacrifice of lives, but only and exclusively the sacrifice of selfishness, pride, and vanity. You will triumph only if you are inspired by charity and sustained by faith. So what do you think is the influence of faith in our lives? Ultimately, what does faith bring us that nobody can take away from us? Exactly. That's the biggest. There are many others, but the biggest one is this one for sure. I printed this one, and we're going to read it because it's absolutely beautiful. This is a text, a message from this book called O Cântico das Virtudes, and I was just telling Bia about it. I bought this book as soon as we started. Like buying books from Projeto Espiritizar, I thought it was beautiful. The title was beautiful. I bought it, and it was on my bookshelf, and I had never opened it. So Thursday after the lecture with Saulo here, we were just having a conversation, and I mentioned that I was going to prepare the mini talk for today. And he said, what are we going to talk about? And I said, well, because I am very involved with the children's education, I always like to talk about the virtue of the month because it goes with the kids. So I just like it. And he said, well, and what approach are you going to take? And then I told him, and he said, why don't you use O Cântico das Virtudes? And then I felt a little embarrassed because I had never opened the book, so I wasn't really sure what it was about. And he probably gathered that from my question mark look. And then he explained to me, this whole book is small, short, like this one. It's all letters. They're all letters from the virtue to the egotistic movement or to the egotistic feeling that antagonizes it. So, and it is beautiful. It's to die for. So, we're going to read this one. And of course, we're talking about faith. So, this letter is from faith. And are you guys comfortable reading, or can we take turns? Yeah. Okay. I'll start and then we can go one paragraph each. And chapter 12, and it's called Innocent Wait. I waited for you, anxious to see you at the moment when the sun would touch the ground again, starting a new day.
My heart was pulsing a different heaven, and I walked down the halls of the orphanage, knowing that following day I would embrace your heart in my heart forever.
I decided to pick flowers from the garden where I learned to cultivate charity and
Cold winter had hit me. Found myself as the several severe moral impact before formed myself hope of her arrival. Take me away from solitude, then forever.
I counted the hours in prayer so that the doors of the orphanage would open and I would see your arrival with gleaming smiles. But when the first hour had passed, I asked myself if I hadn't made a mistake about the moment set up for for our immortal appointment.
Hope warmed my thought.
I was certain that at that moment, orphanhood was going to be just a memory from my death. Now I will be able to see you again, play with you, learn from your experiences and live by loving love of God, guided by the search for the heart of the Almighty.
One more hour of delay, and I realized something strange had happened to your plan.
Why, my beloved, did you leave me alone, begging for your presence, hoping to be welcomed to the end of time?
My bed is this it is my bed is this still empty, and I was dreaming to be warmed by the fireplace of your home.
Were the fruit that I figured from the tree of comprehension and understanding enough for our true love and loving communion?
The afternoon was falling, and the night was coming.
My face was covered in tears.
Your words were not
Purposes were not achieved.
My chest was palpitating in pain because of your forgetfulness. And the only thing that I could do was water the flowers that I had in my little hands, drops that fell from my feet.
Oh, dear beloved of my soul.
tomorrow will be a new day, and I'll wait for your arrival.
I will be captive in the orphanage of your soul. You always don't come to pick me, but I will always be confident, because to me, promise will never be.
And when you come, even if you arrive unsteady, tired, sick, hopeless, the flowers of my affection will never
Wither, yeah, ressecar.
they will always be watered, offered.
See you soon. I know you will arrive. I'm waiting for you. Your sister, Faith. In this case, it's not the egotistic feeling. Faith is waiting for whom? Where are the virtues? Where are faith is a virtue, and then there's a law associated to it. And where are the divine laws written? In our conscience. So, what do you think is the orphanage?
The conscience, it's all hidden.
That we numbed.
Locked.
Yeah, that we numbed, que nós amortecemos, right? So, who is faith waiting for?
Itself.
For us to decide to go get it. Right? So, yeah, with this message, which is absolutely amazing, I leave you to reflect. Well, for us to reflect. Any comments, questions, doubts? I promise I will not make you suffer if you have doubts. No, all good?
It's just a comment. It's easy to say, to discuss and talk about faith between a group which 100% know or at least have an idea what that is trying to.
All the
exercises
virtues.
to how to communicate that outside to people who are not,
Very good point.
right?
Very good point. Siri wants to participate. So that's a very good point you made, Bruno. So let's think about it. Can you convince anybody to have faith? Can you change anybody? Who can you change? So in relation to other people, think about the virtue of faith. So you can have faith. How would that relate to other people? Exactly. Exactly. So through the examples that you give of trying to exercise the virtue truly and not the masked egotistic feeling.
But the examples we will be given when we are passing through a difficult moment, right? It's not something that's most of the time is public, right? It's just the inner circle, our inner circle are there, right?
Yes, but it shows in many other ways. It shows in when you're not bad mouthing or blaming God for something that happened to you or anybody else for that matter. So it shows on how you conduct yourself, it shows on how you behave yourself. It may not be obvious because you're not carrying a sign, I'm faithful, look at me. However, those who have eyes to see will notice. And I understand your point because sometimes there are family members that you're looking at them and you wanted to see them in a better place, since we know that the biggest influence is the happiness that it brings us. And we want to see someone at a better place, like we've been feeling better. But again, we can talk about, but we can't try to convince or change them. But our own happiness, our own peace of mind is what we can show for it. And stop with the need to control everybody, right? Exactly. To convince everybody that our ideas are right and our ideas are the best. Because if we do that, we're still being prideful. We still haven't understood that we truly are not better or worse than anybody else, that we can only better than ourselves yesterday. And it is an exercise in itself. Just that is an exercise in itself.
What is that saying that just says know the truth and
the truth? Yeah, you shall know the truth, and the truth will set you free.
Right. So we somehow know the truth, right? We know that huge.
With our limitations, yes.
Yes. Portion of the society.
We're just going to do the final prayer, Eric.
Right? Doesn't know the truth. We engage them also. Through examples, I find it very abstract. But at the same time, I don't like the indoctrination thing that other people do, right?
The truth, yeah. You know, Bruno, the truth is as much as we would like to spread the, I'm not walking. As much as we would like to spread the joy and share what we know and feel and stuff with everybody else, remember that we are still cranking the wheel, and sometimes we stop, and sometimes we have to start again. So we also need to make sure that what we have is real, that it's not just 2 turns and we're going to stop. So sometimes we want to give something that we don't have yet, that we still need to work to acquire, to work to reach that goal. And then our examples, our words will be so rich and full of of the truth that they will be a lot more effective than trying to preach or doctrinate anybody. Like Chico, the moral authority he had when he spoke, but he had the virtues he was talking about. So it makes a difference. We speak of what our hearts full. Okay, let's do our final prayer and go for the passes. Dear Lord, thank you again for the brothers and sisters who are here today in person, online. Thank you for everybody who works or who worked hard on all this material that we can now study, analyze, investigate, reflect upon, so that we can understand, try to feel it, and then experience it in our lives. Thank you to all the spiritual mentors who help facilitate all this wealth of knowledge that is brought to us. Please, Lord, help us connect our will to your will. Help us connect with your love, with your charity, and with your fairness. Let our spiritual guides show us the path to goodness. Let us be willing to work. Let us not be lazy and choose the easy route. Let us say yes to the invitation Jesus has been making us for 2,000 years. May we have a blessed and productive week, trying to reflect on the contents that we saw today, trying to apply them, trying to feel them in our hearts and apply them to small actions, to small decisions, to our daily lives. So be it. Só chamar o Ed, né? Amor, acho que hoje para a transmissão. Para a transmissão.